Hi, I'm Amy from the Ross Farm, and this is Sheep and Wool School. I'm really excited about all the things we have to talk about today. There's a new breed since it's the first day of March. We're starting a new breed this month, and it's one of my favorites, so I'm really excited about it. This is the last day of Spin Together, and I got some spinning done, which is very exciting if you're me because I haven't spun in a really long time. And I really enjoyed it. So let's talk about what I did get spun. So I finished the Cheviot from Into the Whirled. This was a club colorway called the Upside Down, which I was in their club in 2018. So this is older stash, but I really love how it turned out. It's a few shades of kind of an olive green and purple, a few shades of purple. And I did a three-ply traditional three-ply, 3 bobbins into 1 bobbin. So it ended up being about 170 yards of a worsted weight. This was a 4-ounce bump. So it's kind of a heavy worsted, maybe an Aran. I kind of had in the back of my mind that I was probably going to knit a hat with this when I finished it. So I'm really happy with the thickness that it came out. Now I also did that batt that we talked about before from Femto Designs. She was a Pittsburgh-based dyer and batt maker back in probably 2018 as well. And so I turned the batt into this skein, which is probably, it was only a 2-ounce batt, so it's probably about 70-ish yards of kind of a bulky. And that's probably going to be a hat or ear warmers or something of that sort as well. I really love this. It's lots and lots of shades of blue, and it's got some sparkle to it, and it's got some sheen. It had a lot of really interesting things in the batt, so I'm really excited with how that turned out as well. The last thing that I was trying to finish before Spin Together was over was this set of rolags from Classy Squid, who is also no longer dyeing, but they are so beautiful. I've kind of been eyeballing these for a while now in my stash, and I just decided that they were going to take a trip on my Hansen and be some really cool yarn and be another hat, because you can never have too many hats, right? So I did the rolags on one of my Acreworks bobbins on the Hansen, and I'm getting ready to spin another one of those. So that's what's going on for me and what's on the wheel today. I'm wondering, following up from last week, have you looked at your stash like I did? Have you decided that you really need to spin more and spin through some of that? Because I definitely have. I have made myself a goal, because it's good to have goals, to spin 1 braid, 1 bump, 1 batt, 1 package of rolags, 1 of whatever unit it is per week in 2025. I'm a little bit behind because I didn't start until last week. So maybe I'll try to catch up, but even if I just spin 1 a week from now until the end of the year, that's still probably, what, 45-ish? 40, between 40 and 45, I'm not mathing right now, things out of my stash, which should make a bit of a dent. But if not, I will try to spin 1 a week in 2026, or 2027, or 2028, however long it takes me to get through the stash. because I'm sure as I'm spinning through things, other things, new things are probably going to creep in there because you know how that works, right? You get really excited about spinning and you see an ooh shiny and it has to come home with you. And yeah, the best thing I can do for my stash management is to never leave my booth when I'm doing a fiber festival. If I'm teaching, I'm usually too busy to shop, but if I'm just in the booth and I have some booth babes with me, sometimes I do wander off, and that's when new acquisitions happen. So I'm going to try to stay in my booth in 2025 and not procure any new fun spinning because honestly, I've got plenty to do um, as samples for classes and such. I really don't need any more commercially prepared fiber, but I'm sure I'll end up with some. Anyways, and if I did, it would probably be one of the bullseye bumps from Loop Fiber Arts because I absolutely love those, and they make really, really nice skeins for doing a one color or a color work piece that is just 2 yarns because they spin up to be kind of self-striping if you do a chain plied 3-ply as a pro tip for you. So anyways, on the needles, I have been working on my Ooh Shiny, my Shiny Squirrel that just keeps jumping in front of me. I got a lot done on it this week. We were driving a bit, and so I did probably, 2.5 or 3 inches this week. I decided that as I work through this with you guys, I'm going to move the progress keeper up to the top every time we record so I can see how much progress I'm making in a week. And that will motivate me to finish it. This is one of the skeins. There are two. So this is going to be quite large and lovely, and I'm really excited about it. So that's what's on the needles for this week. Now, this is the part that we all love. Sheep and Wool School. So this month's breed is the Leicester Longwool. So this is my particular favorite breed. They were the first intentional breed that I purchased when we moved into having rare breeds instead of just my Cheviots back in 2008. And I fell in love with Mr. Jefferson when I brought him home from Colonial Williamsburg and ended up purchasing 9 ewes for him that year while we were driving home. I was on my cell phone calling other breeders and picking up 9 ewes for Mr. Jefferson that year. So let's talk about the history of the Leicester Longwool because that's the important part. Where did they come from and how did they get here? So the Leicester Longwool was developed in the 18th century by a gentleman by the name of Robert Bakewell. And Robert Bakewell was one of the first geneticists, really, working with selective breeding. So at this time period, the whole genetics field really was in its infancy, and the existing Leicester sheep at the time was not exactly thriving. So Bakewell did some selective breeding and created the improved Leicester Longwool, or the Dishley Leicester. His home, where he did all of his selective breeding, was called Dishley Grange, and it is in Leicestershire in the UK, in England. And so he did all of his work to selectively breed them to be a large, heavy wool breed with long, lustrous fleece and a large carcass so that they would make excellent meat sheep as well. Because remember, they're eating a lot of lamb and mutton in the 18th century. Mutton is the word for older sheep. Everything over 12 to 18 months is considered mutton, even today. So he turns out to be a master of marketing. Okay. So Mr. Bakewell starts putting ads in the periodicals of the day, proclaiming the wonderful attributes of the improved Leicester, the Dishley Leicester. They are absolutely what you need for your flock. They improve everything, whatever is wrong, whatever you need to improve. All you really need is a Leicester Longwool, the improved Leicester, the Dishley Leicester. So word travels across the pond, and basically all of the founding fathers in this country and everybody who's anybody is importing these Leicester Longwool rams to the U.S. to use with their sheep. So George Washington gets them, Thomas Jefferson gets them, um, James Madison, George Mason, everybody who's anyone is getting themselves an improved Leicester to add to their flock's genetics and improve the quality of the wool and meat in their flock. So everybody loves them. Everybody's raving about them. They start to really spread. And by 1826, they make the jump to Australia as well. And they become, at one point, the largest flock in Australia, the biggest breed in Australia, the Leicester Longwool. So this is how they start to spread worldwide. Now, it's really important that we start thinking about they're in England, they're in Australia, and they've come to the US, all right? Here's where it gets dicey. Around the 50s, when polyester starts to really become a thing, really replaces most of the natural fibers in the marketplace. I always say, when anybody asks me, like, if they're such great sheep, why did they fall off in popularity? Why were they extinct in North America? And I always say polyester killed the Leicester. Because if you look at a Leicester fleece, it is 8 to 12 inches long. It is a very strong fleece, which means it's got a higher micron count and a more of a ringlet form than a crimp. We'll talk about that when we get into the fleeces, probably next week. And if nobody wants to make carpet with wool anymore, if they want to make polyester carpet, then there's no job for wool sheep. And especially coarse wool, long wool sheep, there's nothing to do with them. So there's no reason to raise them anymore. People sell off their Leicester flocks and move into something more commercial that is more economically advantageous in the market then. So we move now to the late 80s with Colonial Williamsburg. Now, since their restoration efforts started in the late 40s, early 50s, they had sheep on the property, but they were basically a commercial Dorset-based sheep, just to interpret that colonists would have had sheep. Colonists would have had sheep. These are sheep. Because at that point, we really didn't do a whole lot of research about farm animals, because sheep are sheep. So they start looking, and they realize that the most prevalent sheep breed in the 18th century in Virginia would have been the Leicester Longwool, because of the marketing efforts of Robert Bakewell. So George Washington has them. Everybody has them. They're great. We should get some, right? Colonial Williamsburg. Hey, let's get some colonial sheep. Let's get some Leicester Longwools. So they start doing this exhaustive search, all right? And they find one ram left. And he is he is up in the very top of the country, maybe across the border in Canada. That detail I'm forgetting right now. So his name is Willoughby, and they bring him to Colonial Williamsburg with the intention of doing a breed up plan. I think we've talked about what a breed up plan is, but basically you start with your commercial ewes, your ewes of whatever breed they are, and you add the breed that you want in the male form. So we have our Leicester Longwool ram, Willoughby, and he's going to breed all of their sheep, and they're going to then breed the offspring back to Willoughby and the offspring to themselves and breed up to as close to purebred as they can get, which is what they've done in this country with several of the rare breeds. Eventually, they've been able to import a little bit more semen and embryos across most of the rare breeds and get to the purebred state. But a breed up program is kind of an easy way to get there if you don't have any ewes of that breed. So this is what their plan was until it goes horribly awry. So one morning, they came in and found that Willoughby was missing. And they got a call from the local police in Williamsburg saying that Willoughby had been found murdered on top of a station wagon in a used car lot. And with his death goes all of their hopes for a Leicester Longwool breeding program at Colonial Williamsburg. He was the last in North America, and now we're at square one. So, Willoughby's death is not in vain. It starts a groundswell of support for the Rare Breeds program at Colonial Williamsburg. Everyone starts sending in money in memory of Willoughby. Money to try to find another Leicester Longwool, try to breed Leicester Longwools. School children are collecting pennies to send in to Colonial Williamsburg to help them find a way to create more Leicester Longwools now that we've lost Willoughby. So they get a kind of a nice little nest egg put together and start looking around. And they come in contact with a gentleman in Australia by the name of Hazelwood. And Mr. Hazelwood starts the program. He gathers up some of his sheep, some of the neighboring sheep, all the different flocks, Australia, New Zealand, everything. And they end up sending 8 ewes, 8 females that have been bred to an unrelated ram, along with 2 unrelated rams that are not the fathers of these babies that are in mommy's tummies. And they send those 10 over to the US. Now, they have to go from Australia to Canada for quarantine, do their quarantine, and then come to the US. And by the time they make their way to Colonial Williamsburg, they now have 8 ewes, plus all of their lambs, because they've lambed while they were in quarantine, and they're ready to breed these 8 ewes to the rams that were shipped over with them and create the second generation. Then the lambs from the first generation that were born in quarantine, the following year, they can also be bred to these unrelated rams because that's not their daddy. And we continue to move forward with the breeding program. So from the death of one ram, we were actually able to build the Leicester Longwool breed that you see today in the US from those 10 individuals that were purchased through the fundraising efforts after the death of Willoughby. So I think that's really, really, really cool. That all happened in 1990. So this year will be the 35th anniversary of the Leicester Longwools in the US. If you remember, about 5 years ago, we had actually 10 years ago, we had the 25th anniversary at Maryland Sheep and Wool, and we had a big celebration, and it was wonderful. And we brought over some of our breeder friends from the UK, and they helped with a card grading, which I can give you a link to if you're interested in card gradings. But it's just been a wonderful, heartwarming story of how a tragedy ended up becoming kind of a blessing. So we'll talk next week about the fiber. We'll talk about the size of the animals and all of that. But I just wanted to give you a little history of the breed this week so that you can start thinking about working with Leicester Longwool. Now, if you would like to anything along with us, which I know there's a couple out there that are already started on their anything along Leicester Longwool projects, we have several Leicester Longwool yarns and a couple of shades of roving in the online store, therossfarm.com. And there's actually a couple behind me. This is Leicester Longwool. All of these colors are Leicester Longwool. I have dyed Leicester, and there's natural Leicester also somewhere. This is our white Leicester. The silver from the UK is up there. There's actually some UK Leicester Longwool in our online shop if you want to compare the UK yarn to the American yarn. The UK yarn is raised in the UK and processed by the Natural Fiber Co., maker of Blacker Yarns, and my stuff is processed at a fiber mill that is now out of business. So it's really exciting. I'm really super glad to be doing the Leicester Longwool this month because Jefferson, my original ram, he was one of the greatest men I've ever known, even if he was a sheep. And he's pretty much why I'm in rare breeds now, because it was so important to me to make sure that animals like Jeff continued on. So that's our sheep and wool school for today. Don't forget to tag anything along in whatever project you're working on in Leicester Longwool. Also the Jacob and the Cheviot. You're still working on those? That's fine too. Tag those in anything along. We love to see what you're doing. And yeah, Leicesters are amazing, man. I hope you got to see some fun photos. I gave John a few photos to pop up, and I'm hoping you got to see those while I was chattering on and on about the Leicester Longwools. So I'm also working on a bunch of sewing stuff. I did a ton more binding quilts this week while I was taking a break from spinning, because I managed to really spin until I didn't realize I had arthritis in my thumb, but apparently I have arthritis in my thumb because after a while of spinning, with the pinching and the pinching and the pinching and the pinching, my thumb was really hurting. So I did take a break and do some hand sewing, and I did some of those bindings on the quilts. But what I started was the Polka Dot Pincushion UFO Challenge 2025 March project. So today was the first day yesterday was the first day I could work on it. They announced at like noon on, they actually did it like noon on, was it noon on Thursday? I can't remember now. But anyways, I got started just about as soon as they announced what the number was. So as I said before, we have a spreadsheet, and in December, we put 14 projects on the spreadsheet. Every month, they draw a number, and whatever the number corresponds to on the spreadsheet, that's what we work on that month. So this month, I am working on my 2023 Snow Day Surprise. So my local local quilt shop back in Pennsylvania, where the farm is, where I lived all of my life until I moved to Ohio. It's a little shop in a place called Finleyville called Quilter's Corner. And they have an online presence. You can go there and shop if you'd like. But Quilter's Corner every year in December does a kit that they call Snow Day Surprise. And you don't know what the pattern is going to look like. You get to choose one of 3 different fabric collections for the project. And the one that I chose in 2023 was the historic one, because that's usually kind of my vibe. So there was a lot of Kim Deal fabrics in there, and a lot of Henry Glass, some historic looking, because it was the historic set. So I purchased that, and I put it away because we were in the process of buying the house and moving and all of the things. So that was this month's project, and I pulled it out. And so the reason it's a surprise, and the reason it's called Snow Day Surprise, is you don't get the pattern when you buy the kit. The pattern is emailed to you after the first significant snow, and I forget how many inches it has to be, but after the first significant snow in Finleyville at the quilt shop, or Valentine's Day, whichever comes first. Now, historically, it's always just been Valentine's Day, because there really hasn't been a snowy winter in southwestern Pennsylvania that got us the pattern any sooner. So we get it on Valentine's Day, and then we could get started, except that I didn't. And it got stashed with all of my other fabrics and all of my quilt kits and things. And so I pulled it out, and I got it all cut, and I'm ready to start piecing. So next week, I'm really hopeful that I have some progress on it to show you, because I'm getting ready to go out of town for the Nash Yarn Fest, which we'll talk about later. And so I'm going to have a chunk of the month of March when I'm away and won't be able to work on it. So I'd like to get as much of it done early in the month as possible, so I'm not pushing to finish in time for the deadline at the end of the month. So, I love deadlines. And as I always say, it's good to have a goal. So I'm going to try to get some significant amount done this week, so that I'm not stressed out at the end of the month. And then sparklers, which I was working on last month, that will be what I work on after I finish this one, if I finish it early. So that's what I'm working on for my sewing stuff. And I'm really excited. I just love doing these challenges because it keeps me on track. I'm very type A. I love my planner. I love having a deadline to meet. That's how I got done with the Coleman design that I can't talk about yet, which should launch before we talk next week. So I'll be able to actually show it to you instead of just a, jumbled up clump of gray brown yarn. So this weekend, so we had the day off on Friday, and we took a little trip. So first of all, in season for this week, I found a jar of finishing sauce at our local grocery store here, and it was from an Italian restaurant here in Cleveland that's very well known for their delicious food. So I wanted to give it a shot. So I made chicken piccata, which is one of our favorites this week, and I didn't bread anything. I just pan seared the chicken breasts, cooked them through. I cooked a package of mushrooms, and then I put the finishing sauce and capers in with the chicken and the mushrooms. Served it over rice. It was so good. John is actually asking me just to make him rice with the sauce on it, if I don't have time to make him chicken, because it was so delish. It was absolutely amazing. So that was one of the things I made this week. I also made my killer meatloaf. It's a big hit with John, and it's something I can throw in the refrigerator already whipped up and just pop it in the stove when it's time to make supper. and I'm busy getting everything done. So that was another thing we made this week. But I'm sowing seeds. I'm getting everything all up and running, ready for gardening season. I was so excited because it was like 50 degrees and it was just beautiful outside. And I thought I'd get a minute to work in the garden. But we ended up taking off and going on an adventure for the day. And then we woke up this morning and there's an inch of snow. So that apparently was full spring yesterday, and today is third winter. And I think it's supposed to go to 60 this week and then like crash again, and maybe we get more snow. I don't know. Northeast Ohio is just, if you don't like the weather, wait 10 minutes because it's just all over the place. So if I sound a little froggy, it's because my sinuses are killing me because the pressure is going up and down and up and down and up and down. And it's 20 degrees and it's 50 degrees and it's 20 degrees and it's 50 degrees. It's crazy. So yesterday we took a little field trip. We like to go on adventures on 2 lanes. And so yesterday we ended up doing a new segment that we're calling Out and About. And we took a little ride all the way out through some farm country by us and then turned and headed up to the lake. And there's so many cute little villages right along Lake Erie headed toward Michigan. And it's one of our favorite rides to take. But this time we stopped at one of our favorite little antique shops. And I don't remember the name of the little teeny tiny town. It's right before Oberlin. It's in that area. It might actually be in Oberlin. I don't know how big the radius of Oberlin is, but it's right before you go into Oberlin. And we stopped in there, and I had a really good feeling yesterday about that particular shop. And when I walked in, one of the first things I found was a jadeite batter bowl, which had gotten broken in the move. And I love my jadeite, Fire King jadeite. So I was really excited to get it. And then I turned around to take it to the counter to ask them to hold it while I looked around some more. And I found this quilt just sort of hanging in a corner. And I love, love, love these motifs. I don't know if you're very familiar with these, but my dining room tablecloth has a very similar motif on it. And so I recognized it right away. These were pre-printed squares that usually companies like Hirschner's, if you remember the company Hirschner's, they sold in the 40s and 50s, pre-printed, and then you would do the cross stitch and the embroidery, and then there are little blue dots all around the squares to indicate where you're supposed to do the hand quilting. So my grandmother did several of those when I was a child because, like me, she also had a stash, and so she would pull out some of her Hirschner's kits and she would do the embroidery or she would do the applique, and then we would sit together at the quilting frame and quilt them on the little blue dots. So I recognized that right away, and it made me very happy. It gave me a warm and fuzzy, like thinking of my gram. And so I threw it in the stack with my batter bowl. And then I was coming around the corner and I felt like this one particular corner in this far room was going to have some sort of a treasure in it. So I walked over and I looked around and I didn't see anything. And then I happened to look down at the floor when I was getting ready to turn around because I was afraid of tripping over all of the crap on the floor. And I happened to see out of the corner of my eye one of my Currier and Ives blue and white, from the IGA or the A&P in the 70s. The teapot was there in the bottom case. So I had to pick that up too. The cool thing is, once I got home, I noticed that there is a label, and it's on the other corner, on the back of the quilt that says who did the embroidery of the blocks, and then her daughter pieced the quilt, put all the blocks together, added the setting triangles and the borders, and machine quilted the rest of it. So that I didn't notice when I bought it, but that made me very excited because now I know who I have to thank for this beautiful, beautiful piece. It is probably baby size. It's going to go on the wall in my living room because it will be directly across from the tablecloth that pretty much matches it in my dining room. So I'm very excited about this. This is one of my favorite treasures that I found in the most recent years. But then we went on up to the lake and we drove out a little while, and I wanted to go to a quilt shop that I hadn't been to before in Sandusky. And I was really excited to go out there, and we're driving down Route 6, I think it is, right along the lake, looking at, it was frozen, there were big chunks of ice, and then all of a sudden there weren't. So there's like must be a warmer section of the lake than the area near Cleveland. And we came around a bend, and we were like 3 miles from the quilt shop I wanted to go to. And there was this weird little shop on the side of the road, and it said something like Great Lakes Gifts and Primitives or something. And I thought, okay. But John turned in and parked the car, and he said, come on, let's just go take a walk around and see if we see anything. So I just wanted to get to the quilt shop before they closed. I didn't want to stop. I wanted to go to the quilt shop. So we went in. And as soon as we walked in, we went around the corner, and I was looking at a small Oxford mixing bowl. There's these beautiful, beautiful, like cornflower blue mixing bowls. I have one about that big, and this was the smaller one that would nest inside it. So I was really excited about that, and it was really cheap. So I thought, I'm just going to grab that. So I came around the corner, and then I know I've talked about our swanky swigs. They were like jelly jars and craft cheese jars in the 40s through the 70s. So I saw something that looked like that, except it was a small biscuit jar. I'll put up photos next week. You don't want to see them right now. They're dirty. But it had lambs around it, and it was kind of an ombre from red to yellow. And I thought, well, that's cute, and I'm sure I can find something to do with that. And it was like $6. So I stuffed that under my arm and started around the corner. And I hear John yell from the other side, hey, look, I found some Hazel-Atlas. Aren't you proud of me? I recognize some Hazel-Atlas. And I may have mentioned before, John's grandfather loaded the trucks at the Hazel-Atlas glass plant back in our hometown where we grew up, and everybody worked for Hazel-Atlas. If you didn't work for Duncan Miller or Hazel-Atlas or Washington Steel or J&L Steel or Jessup Steel, then you were unemployed, because that's who employed everybody in our town. So there's a lot of Hazel-Atlas. There's a lot of history in our families with Hazel-Atlas. And so he was really excited. He had found 4 little sherberts in this strange pattern that we'd not seen before. And there was a pink one, a yellow one, a green one, and a blue one. And they were absolutely adorable and perfect for Easter. They would look really great on the tablecloth that matches the quilt. And we were really excited to get these 4 little sherberts. So John, being John, he starts talking to a lady who is working in her booth right there near where we had found these. And he says, these are really cute. I like these. These are Hazel-Atlas. My pap loaded the trucks at Hazel-Atlas. And she says, oh, well, my friend in the back room has a lot more of those. You should go look at them. And he's like, oh, yeah. And I said, well, we need to see all the rest of the store. We'll get to the back room eventually. So he takes off with Sally to the back room to go look for, and so I run along behind because I don't know what he's going to get into. So I turn the corner, and there's an entire rack of this Hazel-Atlas pastel dishes, glasses, sherbets, bowls, small plates, large plates, cups, saucers, tumblers, serving bowls, like a whole rack, okay? And they're adorable. They're absolutely beautiful. So we start asking Sally questions because Sally owns the 4 sherbets that he is intending to buy. And she's just taken us to this entire rack of this stuff. And she shares with us that this is a Hazel-Atlas pattern called Modern Tone Platonite. Platonite. I'm not sure if it's platinite or platonite, but whichever, it's the modern tone. And what it is a white glass that has a glaze applied to it before firing. So it's not like painted milk glass. It's not like an applied decal. It's literally a colored glaze fired onto white glass as it's being made. And it's absolutely gorgeous. So we found pink, yellow, blue, green, a darker green, some cranberry, and a couple of kind of a cobalt blue, and a few that were just plain white. It's not milk glass. That's what I originally thought, but I was corrected. So I started doing the research while we're driving home because it's just absolutely gorgeous. Because of course we bought it all. I have confession time. I'm Amy, and I have a plate problem. I love dishes and glassware, and I will probably have to build onto my house to house all of my dishes and glassware. True fact. But the good news is, John loves my dishes and glassware, so it doesn't matter. And when I'm gone, they'll dispose of it. Who cares? I've gotten a lot of joy out of stupid dishes and glassware. So we ended up getting over 100 pieces because, of course, I put a few things in in my little cart there, and I started up to the front of the store, and I said to the lady at the register, "Could you do it a little bit better on price if I took a larger quantity?" And she said, "Well, let me call the lady who owns it. Let me call the lady who owns it." And so she calls her up, and she says, "There's somebody here that's looking at the modern tone. She wondered if you'd do any better on the price." And she looks at me and she says, "She'd do $125 for all of it." And I said, "Okay." I had not planned to buy all of it. I thought I would probably buy service for 8, maybe, or 8 of whatever they had 8 of. We got it all. So I got over 100 pieces for 125 bucks, which ends up being like just $1 and a few cents a piece, right? So she packed it all up, paid her for it, loaded it all into the Jeep, and we're driving away. And I did what I always do. I pulled up eBay, and they're going for $12 to $20 each. So we're going to call that an investment piece, right? Yeah. So that's my story for today for Out and About. We also got a few more swanky swigs, but we'll talk about that. So I hope if you're enjoying Sheep and Wool School that you will subscribe and like the video. And I would love to hear in the comments down below what you're making for the Anything Along, what your favorite collection is, if you've had any interactions with the Leicester Longwool sheep or the fiber, what you thought of it. I find it to be very soft, even if it is a coarse wool. And tell me what you're working on this week and what you're looking forward to as spring is hopefully right around the corner. It's March 1st. I don't want to say how much longer can this nonsense last because that's like asking for it. And we'll have a blizzard in April and be buried in 3 feet of snow. So let's just try to get through these last few weeks of winter and get gardens planned and start working toward the beautiful, beautiful summer weather when we can go up to the lake and do some more antiquing, because now I have a couple of cups and saucers that I'm going to need to find because I only have a few of those to go with the 7,000 plates that came with this set. So I hope wherever you are that everything is going well and you're enjoying the few days of snow or whatever's going on where you are. And I hope that you'll join me next week. Like and comment and share and subscribe to the channel. Head on over to therossfarm.com, pick up some Leicester Longwool to join us in the Anything Along. And as always, if you have some Leicester Longwool or you have someone local to you who is raising Leicester Longwools, please, doesn't matter where it comes from, just support these beautiful sheep. And until next week, we'll see you real soon.